yawmi yawmiddin. It is great to see everybody again. May Allah accept from us our mourning for Imam Hussein alayhi salam and grant us the tawfiq to be able to be at the service of Imam Hussein alayhi salam in Muharram and Safar. Inshallah, please recite salawat. There are different narrations about the shahadat and martyrdom of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. Some of the narrations say the 12th of Muharram, which was passed last week. And also there are other narrations that say the 25th of Muharram. Usually in the calendar that, Iranians have, usually the 12th is the day that it is remembered. Tonight we'll be talking about learning from the life of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, the one who was present in Karbala and the one who was living after Imam Hussein alayhi salam for about 34 years. When you want to describe this time period, you realize that this time period is a complete suppression of Shiism and followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Some of the narrations say that they were only a handful because this is right after Karbala and they had killed the followers of Ali Muhammad. Remember the Ashab and those who gathered for Imam Hussein alayhi salam said that we will be the first to fight before any of the Bani Hashim fight. And they very loyally and with self-sacrifice, they were martyred and shaheed for the path of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So then after this, you see that there is much oppression and suppression of Shiism. But Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam was not just quiet and inactive. Actually, he performed in a very active manner, but differently. Maybe in some way we can learn from the time of Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam that how he did when there is oppression, when there is suppression of the Shias. When you look at his life, we see that the Imam would train students. He would have students. Sometimes he would even buy servants. He would buy slaves that he would not need. And he would take these servants and slaves and train them, and then he would free them. If you look at the life of Imam Baqir alayhi salam, you ask your question, how come there are so many students during the time of Imam Baqir alayhi salam? If there are no followers, then what happened that Imam Baqir alayhi salam had so many students? You see, well, one of the answers to this is that during the time of Imam Zain al-Abidin, he promoted so many followers and so many students. One of them that I'm sure you know is Abu Hamza al-Thamadi, for example. You do the dua Abu Hamza in Shahr Ramadan. They say that the first time that Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam met him, well, he was in Kufa. And the Imam mentions that if people sees him, it says if people knew how great it is to pray in Masjid al-Kufa, they would run, like children, like four hands, crawl, run here and pray. If you knew how great it is to pray in Masjid al-Kufa, maybe there are some here who prayed in Masjid al-Kufa. Some of the traditions say if you visit it, it's as if you've done Hajj or Umrah. It's one of our, four locations, one of the four great mosques that we have. One of the places that the Imam of the age will be, in that area, Kufa, and will be reciting the Salat, inshallah, after his Dhuhr and conquest of the world. So Abu Hamza sees the Imam, and at the beginning doesn't know who he is, and the Imam made these trips all the way from Medina to Iraq. And then he understands, Abu Hamza has a lot of potential. And the Imam, sometimes they don't share all their knowledge with everyone. Inshallah, we are one of those who the Imams give us the secret knowledge. He says, basically, do you want to come with me to visit Ali ibn Abi Talib's grave? And he says that nobody knows where it is. He finds out this is Imam Zain al-Abidin, because the grave of Imam Ali alayhi salam was hidden during that time. That's how much dhulm and oppression there was, that people did not know where Imam Ali alayhi salam was buried. So he secretly shows Abu Hamza. And one of the great ziyarats that we have of Imam Ali, ziyarat Aminullah. Anyone recite this ziyarat before? Some say if you go and do ziyarat, one of the only ziyarats to just do this one because it's so authentic and it's so rich. Al-Jami al-Kabira is one of them, which is lengthier, but the ziyarat Aminullah is narrated from Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, that he would come and he would go to Medina and secretly do ziyarat and visitation of his great-grandfather Imam Ali alayhi salam. And it was very similar to Imam Ali alayhi salam when they would see him worship 1,000 units of salat, for example. They would see him because his adornment of the worshippers, Zainul Abidin, he would very humbly say, you have not seen the worship of Ali ibn Abi Talib. You haven't seen the worship. This is nothing compared to that worship. So therefore, one of the activities that was during the time of Yazid and many of the Bani Marwan, Hisham, for example, Walid and Abdul Malik, all these of the Bani Marwan, they were in reality, of the Umayyads, they were in reality suppressing Imam Zainul Abidin. But one, he was teaching. One, he was promoting. Two, one of the other activities that he had was social activities, was the network that he established. In this network that today you see, for example, some say, why do we have to follow a marja? Why do I have to follow a scholar? I had this one person once come to me a long time ago. He said that his wife, I guess, was on a vacation, and for 2 months he was alone. He didn't know what to do. He came to me, he says, you studied the Hawza, right? Yes. He said, this summer, I'm free. I want to be a mujtahid this summer. Tell me what books to read. I'm going to read them. This summer I'm going to be a mujtahid. His wife had left and he has all this free time. I said, I don't think in 2 months, even if you're a computer and AI today, right now, you cannot read and understand to that level to be a mujtahid, to have ijtihad. So anyways, some say, why do you follow the maraja? Why do you follow scholars? At that time, I want to relate it to the wikala and the network that the imams had. If you didn't have access to the scholars of your town, because not everyone lived in Medina. Some lived, for example, in the city of Qom. To go to Zakaria ibn Adam, for example, a very good companion of Imam Rida alayhi salam. Imam Rida alayhi salam says about him that if he leaves the people of Qom, Qom will be chastised, punished. As long as he's living there, there won't be punishment for the people of Qom. So they would refer to these great companions and wakils of the imams, or for example, Shah Abdul Azim Hassani alayhi salam. Now, some majority here have visited him in Ray, and these are the wakils of, for example, Imam Hadi alayhi salam. And you see that people, they have questions, they would go to them. You can't go all the way to Medina, all the way to Baghdad. You can't go to Samarra to ask. You would ask them. Where would they pay their khums to? How would they give their khums? They would give it to that wakil, to that person who is a representative of the imam. So the imams put a network in order to give their people to get their questions answered and to order to give their financial dues. So if a person during that time was not connected, says, I don't like Zakaria ibn Adam, I don't like Shah Abdul Azim Hassani, for example, and other representatives of the imam in Kufa and other places, would a person have access to the imam? No. Unless, again, he lived directly there and the imam was accessible. So if you leave from the scholars during the time of the imams and the representatives, you have left. And during the time of Al-Ghaiba, the Sughra was the same way. During the around 69 years that the imam of the age was in Ghaiba and occultation, people came to the first representative, Muhammad ibn, Uthman ibn Sa'id al-Amri. Then after him, his son, for example, Muhammad ibn Uthman. Then, for example, Hussein ibn Ruh, each one. And they would write letters and they would get their answers, the questions answered. But if you said, for example, I don't want to follow this representative, I don't want to follow, for example, Uthman ibn Sa'id al-Amri. You see, sometimes there were different groups, different people, like Shah al-Maghani and others, that they didn't want to give the khums. They thought they were better to be the wakil, and they left guidance, they left imamat. For example, they were misguided. Today, in the same way, if brothers and sisters, how you see Imam Zainul Abidin or the Imams, they established international network during their times, we have ulama and qualified jurists who know one of the conditions is, at least as a matter of precaution, is that they are zahid of the dunya. They don't attach themselves to the world. these people that have taqwa, these people who do not sin, and they spend their entire lives with قال الباقر قال الصادق alayhi salam, they in a way have representative of the Imams. They have a hujjah upon the people. They give the fatwas on the people, and the people understand what the Imams want from us. And secondly, they collect the khums. Do not think that the marja collects the khums. We are doing that marja a favor. Some of our scholars say, and they would tell the people, remember that I am putting my own neck on the line, that I'm collecting this khums for you. Right now, if I say, I give you $300 amanat, go give it to somebody who's poor. If you're an ihtiyat person, if you're a person who did precaution, say, I don't want to accept it. What if I die? What if I lose the money? The maraja, in the same way, when they accept your money, they are responsible for it. Therefore, they are doing us a favor. So as long as you are in part of this network, you're connected to the Imam of the age. You're connected to the other Imams. You're connected to the hadith that the Imams gave. Because you cannot study the 20,000 around hadith and wasa'il al-shi'a, for example. You cannot understand the sanad and the authenticity of these narrations and the dalalat and indication. Therefore, we are connected to the Imams through this wakalat. So this was the second duty that Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam did. The third, we see his crying for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And this was a cultural battle. Yes, the Imam was crying, but in reality, he's remembering Ashura, because in Ashura, there is guidance. In Ashura, there's many lessons. In Ashura, there's the salvation of Islam. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, you look at his tears and crying. They would sometimes even ask him, why do you cry so much for your father? Imam Sadiq alayhi salam in some of the narrations said Imam Zayn al-Abidin was always mentioned that they killed the son of Rasulullah hungry. They killed the son of Rasulullah thirsty. He would say this. Sometimes he would come to perform the wudu. They say, and he couldn't continue his wudu. Imagine how sad would you be when you're performing wudu and you noticed the water would remind you of your father, and you saw with your own eyes the thirst of your father, Imam Hussein alayhi salam. You knew the maqam of your father, Abi Abdullah Hussein alayhi salam, that his grandfather Rasulullah would mention that he is the chief of the youth of paradise. That Hussein minni wa ana min al-Hussein. Hussein is of me, I am of Hussein. How many verses of the Holy Quran are about Imam Hussein alayhi salam? For ayat tatir, verse of purification, verse of mubahila, the verse of mawadda in connection to the family of the Prophet. It's about Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And yet they did this. So therefore he would cry for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and they ask him, why do you cry so much? And he would answer that Yaqub alayhi salam cried until he became blind for Prophet Yusuf, his son, even though he knew he was alive. He just missed him, and he cried until his eyes became blind. I do not deserve to cry for my father, my family members, that multiple tens of them were killed in Karbala. So therefore you see Imam Zayn al-Abidin continued and started this cultural, you could say, jihad to remember Imam Hussein during the Umayyads. And he himself sometimes would cook food. Some of the books of history, he would have majalis, he would cook food, they would wear black, just like these majalis that we have. Don't think that this is something that later came up from the Safavids or something like that. Look at history. This is from the time of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. During the time of Imam Bagha alayhi salam, Kumayta Asadi was invited, and they had majalis for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. During the time of Imam Rida alayhi salam, that has some of the reciters, for example, come, the Abbas al-Khuzai, for example, and he would recite. And Imam Rida alayhi salam gave his own shirt to the Abbas. And after that shirt of Imam Rida, who he said 1,000, for example, prayers, 1,000 recitation, the Quran was mentioned, he gave that shirt to De'bel because he recited for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Or when Imam Sadiq encourages us and mentions whoever makes someone cry, whoever cries or makes someone else cry, whoever writes poetry, for example, for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, that their sins will be forgiven. This was for us to preserve Karbala so that there's no need for another Karbala to happen. As long as this Karbala is remembered and we learn from the lessons of Karbala, as we are, alhamdulillah, today as followers of Ali Muhammad today, worldwide we are learning. Therefore, there's no need for example, during the times of the Imams, another Karbala. So the third was remembering Karbala. The fourth, we can say that Imam Zayn al-Abidin gave his teachings through As-Sahifa As-Sajjadiyah, through his du'as. And this is a very important book. We have As-Sahifa As-Sajjadiyah, which are, in a way, the du'as of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, and he gave the message through du'as. Through this we understand that, brothers and sisters, sometimes there are time periods that we need to be very clear, and you know what we mean. Sometimes there are time periods that we need to just get the message across, and we don't need to give specific names, for example. But we give the message that those, for example, individuals are giving. We understand that during the time of oppression and repression, that we continue the message that Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam give, either that, for example, follower is in some of the countries that are Salafi and Wahhabi, regardless, or in other countries that they are giving the followers of Ali Muhammad a tough time, that you still continue in any manner that message is being across, that the message can be crossed to the people. When it comes to the maqam of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, we see that throughout Shia and Sunni sources, he's spoken very highly of. I'm going to give you, some of the, sayings of even Ahlul Sunnah about what they say about Imam Zayn al-Abidin, even though this is not for us, should be, proof. We have so many traditions, but for those that like to have comparative theology and see also what Ahlul Sunnah say, one is the likes of Ibn Taymiyyah. We'll start from some of the harshest first. Ibn Taymiyyah is who? Who was he? He is the grandfather, one of the forefathers of the Wahhabis and Salafis movements today. That if you go to Saudi Arabia or go to any of the other places they're introduced, they call him Shaykh al-Islam. He is, hundreds of years ago he lived during the time of Al-Nabi Hilli, and he wrote 8 volumes against us. 8 volumes against Shiism. He says about Imam Zayn al-Abidin, Amma Ali ibn al-Husayn famin kibar al-tabi'in, he is from the greats of the tabi'in wa saadatihim ilman wa dinan. He is of the chiefs, he's of the leaders in terms of knowledge and in terms of deen. This is what Ibn Taymiyyah says. Walahu min al-khushu', and he was humble. Wa sadaqatu sir, he was known to help people. So this is a big statement when those who do not like Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, they're forced. Because sometimes when it comes to history, you have to give some information or else you're not credible anymore. He says that Imam Zayn al-Abidin was known to give charity in private. Remember, charity in private is worth more in the narrations than charity that is done in public. Now, sometimes we do it in public for different motivations to encourage others. This isn't riyah. This isn't showing off. You're just encouraging others. But also remember, there's some charity that you do that nobody knows. Even your own family members do not know. And that is the best. وغير ذلك من فضائل ما هو أعرف معروف. Al-Shafi'i, one of the 4 Sunni scholars of the schools of theology of Ahl Sunnah. Inna Ali ibn al-Husayn afqa'u Ahl al-Madinah. Shafi'i says he is the most knowledgeable person of Medina. Dhahabi says, Kanat lahu jalala ajiba. He is one of the great, from the Sunnis, great historians. وحق له والله ذلك فقد كان أهلا لإمامة العظمى. He was, in a way, suitable for a great leadership, for a great imamat. Dhahabi says about our imam. لشرفه سؤدده وعلمه وتألهه وكمال عقله, because of his nobility, superiority, his knowledge. Muhammad ibn Muslim az-Zuhri. This is one of the main narrators in Sahih Bukhari. Maybe from 9,000 narrations, 1,000 of them are from Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri. He says, ما رأيت أحدا أفقه من. I have never seen anyone more knowledgeable than Ali ibn al-Hussein alayhi salam. It's from the works of Ahlul Sunnah. They're talking about Imam Zayn al-Abidin. I have some stories I have from myself, but I won't bore you. Sa'id ibn Musayyib, another great of the Tabi'in of Ahlul Sunnah, ما رأيت أحدا أفقه من. I have never seen anyone greater than, more knowledgeable than Ali ibn al-Hussein alayhi salam. ما رأيت قط أفضل من علي ibn al-Hussein وما رأيت قط إلا مقدت نفسي. Every time I saw him, I would be disgusted by myself. I would put myself down. One of the greatest, for example, scholars of Medina from Ahlul Sunnah says, every time I saw Imam Zayn al-Abidin, I'd be sick of myself. Because when you see the pure wilayat and imamat and nur of Allah inside a human being, how can you compare yourself, your knowledge, to the knowledge of the imams? So remember, brothers and sisters, what we talk about are imams. This is the reality. Not only do we have traditions in Al-Kafi and Man La Yahdhur al-Faqih and others, and verses of Quran about them, but history testifies the maqam and position that Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam had. And one of the great occurrences, I'll finish the fada'il of Imam Zayn al-Abidin. From one of the occurrences is when Hisham comes, Hisham ibn Abdul Malik comes, and he wants to do the Hajj, perform the Hajj. That time, Kaaba is very crowded, and he's doing the tawaf, and it's very hard for him to get in, maybe to kiss Hajar al-Aswad, to get in close to the Kaaba. And he's expecting, you see arrogant people sometimes, they expect everyone, get out of the way, I'm the Khalifa, get out of the way, I'm the ruler. But people were not really listening to him. They also wanted to get close to the Kaaba. They also wanted to get close to Hajar al-Aswad. So he has a tough time. Then he sees Imam Zayn al-Abidin, and he sees people part ways for him. Just magically, people part ways. And he knew who this person is. You cannot say the Umayyads didn't. But he says, who is this person? Who is he? I'm the ruler, Hisham ibn Abdul Malik. Who is he? Who is this person? Farazdaq is a poet. And he stands up, very courageous. Because now, in a way, there's a fight between Hisham ibn Abdul Malik and the position of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. And he begins, and it's very interesting when you read these poetry, it's not as if he had prepared it and wrote it. These great poets, is just right then he's giving this poetry. And he begins to yell. He begins to say, هَذَا الَّذِي تَعْرَفُ الْبَطْحَاءِ وَتَأْتَى. This is the one who Batha knows. This is the one وَالْبَيْتُ يَعْرِفُ وَالْحِلُّ وَالْحَرَمُ. This is the one who the Kaaba knows. Hisham, you say you don't know who he is, but the Kaaba knows who Imam Zayn al-Abidin is. The sanctuary, the hill knows the sanctuary where is the hill called Wal-Haram. They know who he is. هذا ابن خير عباد الله كلهم. This is the son of Allah's God, of all of the best of all of God's servants. هذا التقي النقي الطاهر العلم. This is the pious, pure, noble, guiding flag among men. هذا ابن فاطمة. In front of everyone, Farazdaq is very courageous, and he gets imprisoned because of this poetry. He says, this is the son of Fatima. In kunta jahila, if you do not know him, bijaddihi anbiya'ullah qad hutimu. Through his grandfather, the line of God's prophets was sealed. This is Imam Zayn al-Abidin. وَلَيْسَ قَوْلُكَ مَا هَذَا بَذَائِرًا. And you're saying, who is this? Does not harm him. When you say, who is this? Like, who is this? So this does not harm him. The Arabs and non-Arabs alike all know whom you deny. They all know who he is, the person that you deny. Both of his hands are generous. كِلْتَا يَدَيْهِ قِيَاثٌ عَمَّ نَفْعُهُمَا. Both of his hands are generous, whose benefits spread widely, and they are sought for help, never tainted by stinginess. Gentle in character, sahlul khaliqa. For him no sudden harm is feared. Nobody fears his harm, Imam Zayn al-Abidin. He is adorned with both beautiful appearance and noble traits. He bears the burdens of people when they are overburdened. Our imams, they bear the burdens of the people. His manners are sweet. His blessings become sweeter with him. And this is the last line of the poetry. I like to say it's very interesting. Ma qala laqat. He never said la. Imam Zainul Abidin never said no to anyone. Illa fi tashahudihi. Except in his tashahud. La ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Please do salawat. لولا التشهد كانت لa'ahu na'am. If it wasn't for the tashahud, all of his laws would have been na'am. So he never said no to anyone. His only no is there's no God but Allah. Again, we say another salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So one of the attributes of the Imam, and tonight the lesson we want to learn is this, is that his unprecedented state of worship, his ibadah. It says that his color would become pale. He kept waking at nights. His eyes were sore from weeping. His forehead and nose were bruised for long sujoods. His feet and ankles were swollen in salat. Sometimes he would pray and his cloak would slip, and they'll say, your cloak has slipped. And then he would mention that, don't you know, who am I worshipping? Who am I talking to? The Imam would be known to pray in a large farm of date trees. He offered 2 rak'at besides every date tree at night. And Imam Bagh a.s. narrates that he used to pray 1,000 rak'ah. Now one of the problems that we have, and this is tonight's topic, the last 10-15 minutes, is the problem that we have, and it needs to really be addressed, is that many of us are sick and we do not know it. This is from the sayings of Hoja Ahmad Mujtahidi, or Akhlaq teacher. It says, when it comes to worship, and I'm talking to myself, and I'm saying this so hopefully this Muharram and Safar we can worship Allah more. He says the fact that you don't feel like worshiping, he says, Maris hasti. He says, you're sick. That's I'm saying from him, not you. That's how he would say it. You're sick. Because your za'iqah and your taste have changed. Naturally, we are created to worship Allah. Naturally, we're supposed to logically worship Him. We know we are here for a limited amount of time. We know here 70 years, 60 years, 50 years. But why is it every time there's supposed to be a dua, a prayer, I say, oh, I'm tired. It comes to salat, oh, I don't feel like I force myself. What is it? What's wrong with me? This is because your taste has changed. Your dha'iqah has changed. But if I tell you right now, I'm going to tell you the secrets of crypto, for example, and have a seminar on crypto, or about how to make money, for example. Or I was saying in the other center that I'm going to tell you the details of this wedding that just took place and what happened and how many carats and diamonds, for example, they purchased. People are, oh, this is interesting, this is fun, this is good, I like it, like, tell me more. Or you watch TV, for example, or on the phone, this is nice, I like this. But when it comes to 2 units of salat, I'm saying this to myself, one ziyarat Ashura, I'm tired, I don't feel like it. Reciting a little bit of Quran. Why? Because I am sick inside. Why? Because my taste buds have changed. When it comes to the hereafter, our taste buds again for everyone will change. Today the tradition says everyone loves dirham and dinar. Dinar is which one, gold or silver? Dinar is gold. This at least you should know. Dirham is silver, right? Today everyone is thirsty for dirham and dinar. Who is the richest person? Which company, for example, is worth this week $4 trillion, for example, market cap? For example, just interested, who made it? We don't ask, oh, who had the best a'mal, for example, who is the richest when it comes. Or Imam Hussein alayhi salam in Dua Arafah asks to make my qina, my richness, from and within, from my nafs. We don't ask ourselves who has the best deeds. But in the hereafter, just how today we are thirsty for money and wealth and maybe fame and different things, beauty, in the hereafter we'll be attracted to amal salih. We'll be thirsty for that. The dha'iqah changes, the taste changes. Just like a child, when that baby is born, and Allah magically, it is a miracle of Allah, allows him to seek for milk. He doesn't know anything else, but knows how to breathe and how to find milk. That's the two things the baby knows, or three things. Then from there, they seek milk. After that, 2 years later, 3 years later, what do they seek? Food, a little bit of sweetness, for example. After 6 months, you can feed the baby, for example. You give them other food. That dhaqa changes. After 2 years, that milk is not that attractive anymore. Now I like food. Then that child later on grows, likes fast food. Tell them, for example, I like hamburgers, cheeseburgers, French fries. I love it. Then they get older, then they like Persian food. When they get older, then they like the food that their parents used to eat. And even more than, for example, fast food. So slowly, and then maybe they get older, I don't know here, maybe they like soup and salad at the end, I don't know. But regardless, the taste changes, right? From a baby to candy to like wholesome food, it keeps changing. In the hereafter, our taste buds will change. And we wish that we had good action. We wish that we paid attention in our salat. We wish that our life was focused on about learning. One of the times you can see when dha'iqah changes is when people don't like to listen to lectures, not my lecture. They don't like to learn anymore because they don't want to grow anymore. They don't want guidance anymore. These lectures are nothing. They're nothing but stories of the imams, of the hadith, of the Quran. I remember that some of our people that I respected a lot, when it came to, they're not an alim, but when it came to visiting one of the maraja, and we saw, one of the great scholars, he was an abid of Allah. He says, I'm willing to trade all my wealth to hear this lecture one more time. I'm willing to trade all my life. How come is it that, for example, our greats, when they're young, sometimes their parents would say, you cannot study in the hawza anymore. They would cry so they can seek knowledge. They could cry so they could worship God. And now I'm not saying we should be at this, but what is it that the ulama before, some of them, like Mullah Hadi Sabzavari, they say, would recite, some of these long du'as that we had, Al-Josh and Al-Kabir, they say in his sujood. He would do Al-Josh and Al-Kabir in the sujood of his salah. Or some of the ulama would do Abu Hamza, for example, in the qunut. But today when it comes to a little bit of worship, we're tired. When it comes to a little bit of learning, we're tired. When it comes to a little bit of reading Quran. Why? Because our taste has changed. If we want to learn something from Imam Zain al-Abidin, it is that a person should learn from our Imam that what should attract us the most should be worship, because there shouldn't be any other experience, any other type of taste that is better than the worship of Allah. I'm going to at the end give a few reasons why in Dua Abu Hamza, Imam Zain al-Abidin, it is recorded that he says, why I'm tired in salat, why I don't pay attention, why my taste buds have changed. Let's recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So in Dua Abu Hamza, again from Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, it says that when I approach, I'm just going to go a little because I know we're running out of time. So Allah, each time I decide to prepare and ready myself for offering prayers before you and conversing confidentially with you, you throw on me slumber. Every time I want to do the salah, I feel tired, I feel distracted. Whenever I stand for prayer, إِذَا أَنَا صَلَّيْتِ, and I'm talking about my own because maybe my salat is the worst salat here. وَسَلَّبْتَنِي مُنَاجَاتَكَ, and you deprive me of talking with you. Brothers and sisters, many times when there is sin, we think that Allah is going to punish us with an accident immediately. Allah is going to make me super poor immediately. Allah is going to make me sick. The tradition says one of the first things God takes away from me is what? That lizzat or the lizzat of munajat. God takes away from me the fact that I love to wake up and, for example, pray to Allah. I love to recite dua. I love to cry for Him. Or I love to cry for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Sometimes when I'm not careful of my eyes, Allah takes away those pure tears for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So Imam Zain al-Abidin is going to explain what is wrong with me. He says, Mali kullama qult. He continues, what is wrong with me? Whenever I feel that my inner self has become decent and that my secession has become similar to the secessions of those who turn away from you. What is it? He said, Master, perhaps you have pushed me away from your door. Maybe you don't want to hear me. Maybe you don't love me anymore. This is a way to cry to Allah. And you have dismissed me from your service. And he says, one of the reasons is, or perhaps you found me, أو لعلك رأيتني معرضا عنك. Maybe you saw me turning away from you, so you turned away from me. Maybe you saw I wasn't following your instructions. I wasn't doing your command, fulfilling your commands, your wajibat. So now you have taken away from me this great worship of you. 2. أو لعلك رأيتني غير شاكر. Maybe you thought that I'm not appreciative of all the favors you have done for me, and now you don't want me to talk to you. Maybe you have given me so much health, so much wealth, so much family, and I've never said Alhamdulillah. I always thought it was from myself. I never said it is from God. And therefore, you give me so much, so you're not going to give me this. أو لعلك رأيتني في الغافلين. Maybe you have seen me of the unattentive ones. You've seen me always in ghifla, always not paying attention to you, paying attention to everything else in the world, but not to Allah. أو لعلك لم تحب أن تسمع دعائي. Maybe you don't like to hear my prayer. أو لعلك بجرمي وجريرتي. Or it is because of my offenses, my sins. أو لعلك بقلة حيائي. Maybe I didn't have haya. Maybe I wasn't modest. Maybe I said whatever I wanted to. I hurt other people's feelings, for example. I dressed however I wanted to dress. So regardless, we see here that there are reasons. أو لعلك فقدتني من مجلس العلماء. Maybe you have not found me in the meetings of the scholars, because the meeting of the scholars is what there is maw'idha and advice. So therefore we see a few of these reasons. Maybe it says here لعلك رأيتني آلف مجالس البطالين. Maybe you saw me in the majlis of the wrongdoers and those that are wasting their lives, sitting with them, talking about useless things, doing batil. So brothers and sisters, what we understand from this dua, Abu Hamza, is that there is a very clear effect from how I behave and how I enjoy my worship. The more I'm careful about myself, the more I attend masjid, the majlis of the ulama, the scholars, the more I am away from the ghafilin and battalin, the more I'm away from jurm and sin, the more I will love to worship Allah. Why? Because that heart is intact, will be a qalb salim. But the more I harm my heart, and I have a heart that is ghafil, I'm not going to enjoy worship. So we always ask ourselves this: is it worth it at the end of the day to make this trade, to trade Allah and His worship? And again, I'm saying this to myself, compared to a few frivolous things that are, wasting our time, or a few commands of Allah that I think are too, difficult for me to act upon. This is the month of Muharram and Safar. These are the times that, one of the best ways to reach Allah, which is through Imam Hussein alayhi salam, is for us. So if we can focus a little bit more on having our behavior be in a good way, I promise you from this, dua, that you will enjoy your worship more, and hopefully will be closer to Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If we can dim the lights, we'll do a dhikr musibat. I want you to think where the caravan of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is now. The first night, after the tents were set on fire, the books of history said that they stayed there in Karbala. A very dark night, a very sad night. You know, when someone passes away, the worst night is the first night. I want you to think how Lady Zainab alayhi salam, Imam Zain al-Abidin, the children of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Imam Baqir alayhi salam, so many different children, how they were the first night after everyone was massacred on the day of Ashura. How were they? There's nowhere to stay. The tents were all set on fire. There's no food. There's no water. These children, they need somebody to come to them and say, send condolences to them, to comfort them. But instead of comforting, they would abuse these children. Were these not the children of Rasulullah? Were these not his Ahlul Bayt, his family? I want you to think of Lady Ruqayya, a 3-year-old daughter, lost her father, wondering where her father is. So saddened by this. What is Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam going to do? What is Lady Zainab alayhi salam going to do? Maybe this is why when they say that they was asked for Imam Zain al-Abidin, what was the worst part of this event? He would say, Asham, 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 Syria, Syria, Syria. As if we're there when you see the necks of Imam Zain al-Abidin, the Imam of the age, has a collar around it. As if we're there when we see Lady Zainab and the family of Imam Hussein alayhi salam going through this caravan, where they're forced to walk with these criminals, mujrimeen, those people who had just killed and massacred the Imam of the age, Imam Hussein alayhi salam. They have to walk with them, they have to travel with them day and night to go to Kufa, to Sham. That time, who is going to take care of these young children? Lady Zainab alayhi salam at that time is giving a speech and lecture in Kufa. Everyone is listening. But for her to get distracted, they take the head of Imam Hussein, the Mubarak and blessed head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and show her in the middle of the speech. There she stops her lecture and looks at the head of Imam Hussein and talks about this hilal and this crescent that they didn't allow, because before this crescent wanted to become a full moon, they have snatched it away from me. Then she turns to Imam Hussein alayhi salam and says about Fatima as-Saqir, Kallimha, speak to your little Fatima. Maybe here is Lady Ruqayya. Speak to her as if she's close to being melted away. She's not going to take it. If you look in the books of history in Maqtal, Lady Zainab alayhi salam is warning and talking about that some will not be able to bear what's going on, and that is Lady Ruqayya. And soon we will see Lady Ruqayya will be from the symbols of the oppression of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Soon she will be holding on to and calling for her father. But instead of bringing her father, they will bring the Muqaddas and holy head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Imam Zain al-Abidin will be there. Lady Zainab will be there. But she will hold on to the head of Imam Hussein, her father, and speak to this head. Ya Abata man alladhi aytamani ala sighara sinni. O father, who has made me an orphan at such a young age? And slowly, while this little daughter of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is speaking to her father, the spirit leaves her body and she becomes another symbol of the oppression of Imam Hussein alayhi salam in Sham. Please continue the Azadari, inshallah, for Imam Hussein Mataman, Hussein alayhi salam. أحسنتم.
صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ومولاي يا أبا عبد الله. آمد دوباره روبروی من سرت حسین، قربان زخمهای روی حنجرت حسین. از غارت خیام نگفتم برای تو زبان حال حضرت زینب. از غارت خیام نگفتم برای تو، شاید بگویم و نشود باورت حسین. از علقمه به بعد نخوابیدم هنوز، افتاده دست من علم لشکرت حسین. او تشنه شنیدن و تو گرم خواندنی، قرآن بخوان برای دل مادرت حسین. از کربلا به کوفه و از کوفه تا به شام، سنگ تو را به سینه زده خواهرت حسین. از روی نی سکینه خود را خطاب کن، از روی نی سکینه خود را خطاب کن. چیزی نمانده جان بدهد دخترت حسین. پیغام تو به گوش جهان میرسد، بلی بانگی رساست حنجره اذخرت حسین. همه بگین حسین جان، حسین جان. یه بار دیگه حسین جان، حسین جان. آسمان هم خجل از چشم تو و بارانت یا زین العابدین. آخری نیست بر این گریه بی پایان که یک روز به دادت آمد. تو 40 سال به لب آمده هر شب جانت، تو 40 سال به لب آمده هر شب جانت. غیر از زینب چه کسی درد تو را میداند؟ غیر زینب چه کسی درد تو را میداند؟ که چه آورده خرابه به دل ویرانت. سخت سوزان دلت را غم آن جسم کبود، خواهرت بود که جان داد روی دامانت. زخمی بزن شراب است دلت بی خود نیست، که 40 سال نکرد اشک دوا درمانت، که 40 سال نکرد اشک دوا درمانت. حسین جان، حسین، حسین جان، حسین، حسین جان، حسین جان، حسین. گلی از گلشن دین مبینم، 4 نور زین العابدینم. گلی از گلشن دین مبینم، گلی از گلشن دین مبینم. 4 نور زین العابدینم، 4 نور زین العابدینم. عزیز فاطمه پور حسینم، عزیز فاطمه پور حسینم. تمام عمر خود در شور و شینم، تمام عمر خود در شور و شینم. حسینم وا حسینم وا حسینم، حسینم وا حسینم. بدیدم ماجرای کربلا را، بدیدم من شهیدان خدا را. بدیدم پیکر سچاک اکبر، بدیدم حنجر خونین اصغر، بدیدم حنجر خونین اصغر. حسینم وا حسینم وا حسینم، حسینم وا حسینم وا حسینم، غریبی حسین را کردم احساس، غریبی حسینم را کردم احساس. زمانی که جدا شد دست عباس، زمانی که جدا شد دست عباس. بدیدم من وداع آخرش را، شنیدم ناله های خواهرش را. بدیدم شمردون خنجر کشیده، سر فرزند زهرا را بریده، سر فرزند زهرا را بریده. حسینم وا حسینم وا حسینم، حسینم وا حسینم، حسینم وا حسینم وا حسینم، حسینم وا حسینم وا حسینم. بدیدم من پدر در خون تپیده، قد عمه ز داغ او خمیده. بدیدم چشم گریان سکینه کنار پیکر ماه مدینه. بدیدم آتش در خیمه ها را، کبود از تیلی کین بچه ها را. بدیدم روی نی رأس بریده، میان خیمه ها گوشه دریده. حسینم وا حسینم، حسینم، حسینم وا حسینم، بدیدم دشمن دین ظالمانه، زکینه زد به طفلان تازیانه، زکینه زد به طفلان تازیانه. همه اهل حرم را خسته دیدم، نماز نمازه عمه را بنشسته دیدم، بدیدم روی نی در شهر کوفه، سر بابم زده چون گل شکوفه، سر بابم زده چون گل شکوفه. بدیدم کینه های مردم شام، زدن بر اهل بیت سنگ از لب بام. بدیدم پرز خون با چوب خضران، به لب تشت لب قاری قرآن، به تشت زر لب قاری قرآن. شنیدم در خرابه اشک و ناله، شبانه دیدم دفن 3 ساله. شنیدم در خرابه اشک و ناله، شنیدم در خرابه اشک و ناله. حسینم وا حسین، حسینا، حسینم وا حسینم وا 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 حسینا، حسینم وا.
نون و قلم نبیست مایسترون حسین، طاق فلک علیست بالم ستون حسین. نون و قلم نبیست عالم ستون حسین، نون و قلم نبیست مایسترون حسین، طاق فلک علیست بالم ستون حسین. خلقت تمام حضرت زهراست خون حسین، هستی تمام ظاهر و مافل بطون حسین. با یک قیامت است هم الغالبون حسین، در این قیام نقطه پرگار زینب است، در این قیام نقطه پرگار زینب. سردار سرسپرده جولان عشق کیست؟ تنها امیر فاتح میدان عشق کیست؟ عشق است حسین گوش به فرمان عشق کیست؟ روح دمیده بر تن بی جان عشق کیست؟ اذن دخول در حرم یار زینب است، اذن دخول در حرم یار زینب است، اذن دخول در حرم یار. ذرات و کائنات همه مرده یا خموش، در احتجاج زنی یک علم به دوش. آتش فشان خداوند در خروش، هوهوی ذوالفقار علی میرسد به گوش. در هیبتی ز حیدر کرار زینب است، در هیبتی ز حیدر کرار زینب است، در هیبتی ز حیدر کرار. ستر ناموس نبوت چون حجاب زینب است، ستر ناموس نبوت چون حجاب زینب است. محتجم لفظ حجاب از احتجاب زینب است، محتجم لفظ حجاب از احتجاب زینب است. دانش آموز علی خواهر ناموس دین، دانش آموز علی خواهر ناموس دیم. کی دهد مجرز سر قرآن کتاب زینب است، کی دهد مجرز سر قرآن کتاب زینب است. بر مشامم میرسد لحظه بوی کربلا، بر دلم ترسم به ما آرزوی کربلا. تشنه آب فرات ای اجل مهلت بده، تا بگیرم در بغل قبر شهید کربلا، تا بگیرم در بغل قبر شهید کربلا. یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین. عقیلة العرب زینب مدد، عقیلة الحرم زینب مدد، عقیلة الحرم زینب مدد، عقیلة الحرم یا بالفضل 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 یا حیدر یا حیدر یا حیدر یا حیدر یا زهرا یا زهرا یا زهرا یا زهرا یا حسن یا حسین یا حسن یا حسین یا حسن یا حسین یا حسن یا حسین یا یا حسن یا حسین یا حسن یا حسین یا حسن گفتی وقت شادی و وقت رضا حسین تنها دلیل گریه و لبخند ما حسین در وقت مرگ چهره ما دیدنی تر است، در وقت مرگ چهره ما دیدنی تر است از اشک‌های شوق ملاقات با حسین. هنگام غسل دادن ما روزه خوان بگو، هنگام غسل دادن ما روزه خوان بگو، عالم فدای بی کفن کربلا حسین حسین. صلی الله علیک یا ابا عبدالله ایها الشهید یا ابن رسول الله یا سیدنا و مولانا انا توجهنا و استشفعنا و توسلنا بک الی الله و قدمناک بین یدی یا وجیها عند الله یا وجیها بیمار داریم، گرفتار داریم، بیخونه، جوون، التماس دعا داشتم. من یجیب 3 بار آیه شریفه رو با هم میخونیم. اعوذ بالله من الشیطان الرجیم. اما يكشف السوء. خدایا خداوندا این قبیل توسلات از ما به کرمت قبول بفرما، ما را ببخش و بیامرز، قلم عفو بر جرائم اعمال ما بکش، آنی و کمتر از آنی ما را از اهل بیت جدا مگردان. به آبروی امام حسین، به آبروی امام زین العابدین و قمر منیر بنی هاشم، این دوستان دهه عزاداری کردن. به آبروی اهل بیت، عصمت و طهارت، هر کس با هر حاجتی امشب اومده از سایه برآورده به خیر بفرما. و عجل الله فی فرج مولانا صاحب العصر و الزمان. السلام علیک یا ابا عبدالله، السلام علیک یا ابن رسول الله، السلام علیک یا ابن امیر المؤمنین و ابن فاطمة الزهراء سیدة النساء العالمین. السلام علیک و علی الارواح التي حلت بفنائک، علیک منی سلام الله ابدا ما بقیت و بقی اللیل و النهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد منی لزیارتکم. السلام و رحمت الله و برکاته. السلام علیک یا شمس الشموس یا انیس النفوس، السلطان ابا الحسن علی ابن موسی رضا المرتضی و رحمت الله و برکاته. السلام علیک یا ابا صالح المهدی عجل الله تعالی فرجک و سهل الله مخرجک. الامان 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 من الفتن زمان و رحمت الله و برکاته. السلام علیکم یا اهل بیت النبوة و معدن الرسالة جميعا و رحمت الله و برکاته. اعوذ بالله من الشیطان الرجیم. بسم الله